other question, or can I move on?
No other questions.
Okay.
Next.
Okay. This is another slide which one of you had put up in the WhatsApp group, and this also is coming from last year's exam only. I remember this. Okay. Can somebody interpret this echo? Echocardiogram always starts with view of the which window, what view, and then go on like that, and then identify the anatomy.
It is 4-chamber view, sir.
Who is that?
Dr. Pradeep.
Pradeep, yeah, go on.
It is with a dilated coronary sinus.
No, wait a minute. You didn't tell me what view it is.
Apical 4-chamber view, sir.
Apical 4-chamber view? You think the transducer is sitting at the apex?
Subcostal.
So,
why do you say subcostal? Who said that?
Sir, there is some on the top of the heart there. We can see some shadow.
What is that shadow? What is that shadow?
Could it be liver or something?
Hey, come on, you're a consultant, you don't tell the patient. Maybe you could be liver, you could have liver there. He will think you don't know where the liver is. Don't answer like that, please. Say it is the liver.
Liver, yes, sir.
This is the liver. Then that is the typical consistency of the liver. So
yes.
This indicates that it is a subcostal view. In the apical 4-chamber view, nothing comes between the apex of the heart and the transducer. Pradeep, don't you know
yes.
that?
Yeah, I got it.
So this is a subcostal view, 4-chamber. Okay, go on now.
Suggest of dilated coronary sinus. Maybe. I don't know.
That is that's the last finding. No, there are many more findings before that, and you're not told that.
Yeah, so it is there is dilated and thinned out LV with RV is also dilated, sir, and
no, somebody else, please. Quick! Come on, we should. Unless we answer quickly, we won't cover many slides. Anybody else?
This is Sendil Murugan from Triple M, sir.
Go on.
Yes, sir. This is subcostal view 4-chamber, sir. We are able to see all the 4 chambers, and the in the near field, I'm able to see a chamber, a ventricular chamber, which has got a moderator band, and the valve is a bit epicophilic, sir. So suggestive of right ventricle. And moreover, the entire cardiac mass is located on the right side, sir. So there is an evidence of extracardia.
See, your findings are correct, but you are going back and forth, no? That is not a good thing, no?
Sorry.
Who is talking in the background, please? Okay. So,
there is dextrocardia. Yes.
Do you start with the RV morphology and then go to the position of the heart? Where is the apex of the heart pointing?
It is on the right side, sir.
So why don't you say that?
Yes.
Where you don't know about dextrocardia, we don't know whether the heart mass is on the right side. It may be in the midline also, but apex of the heart is pointing towards the right side.
Right side.
Okay,
yes.
go on. Next.
And the near field chamber is the right ventricle, so morphological right ventricle. And the other ventricle is left ventricle, appears normal, sir.
Okay.
And I'm not sure about the atrial side. That is where we had a confusion, sir.
Okay.
And the far field atrial chamber receives a drainage, sir. Appears to be IVC. Is that correct, sir?
Far field, sorry, say that again.
The distalmost chamber, sir. The far field atrial chamber.
You mean this one?
The one. Ah, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What is that?
It it receives venous drainage.
Yeah, venous drainage. IVC will come from the side. Will come from the side like this. What comes from the side?
Pulmonary veins.
Then why do you say IVC? IVC will come from the side like this. Never.
Okay, sir.
That
Okay, sir. Pulmonary venous drainage.
Horizontal vein coming into the chamber has to be pulmonary vein, no?
Pulmonary vein. Okay, sir. So it has to be left atrium, sir. Left atrium. The other chamber is the right atrium.
Possible. The other possibilities were sometimes when you're looking from apex, from the below up liver, look up, no.
Yes,
it may not be a pulmonary vein. Also, sometimes when you look up at the roof, the SVC and the innominate vein may be coming here also. So it could be RA also.
Okay,
So it's difficult to say that. I agree, but
yes,
definitely not IVC. IVC doesn't come here.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So you're not sure of the atrial situs. That's
Yes.
okay.
Yes, sir.
So anything else you have? No? So
Yes, and the point, the structure pointed by the arrow appears to be coronary sinus, sir.
Okay.
It is intrapericardial.
okay. So what does it mean? Coronary sinus is always intrapericardial, man. Why do you
Yes, sir.
It's always been intrapericardial.
Yes, sometimes descending aorta also comes in that site, so but it will be extrapericardial.
Descending. Then why do you talk of descending aorta now?
Just to differentiate. I think.
Go on. So now what is the overall? So let us talk of it's either mesocardia or dextrocardia. We agree upon that. Secondly, you described all the LV, RV, but you didn't make any diagnosis out of it. What is this called? RV position, LV position called? Is near field and far field important or right and left important?
So RV on the right side, LV on RV on the left side, LV on the right side, sir.
Is that normal?
No, sir. It is inversion, sir. Ventricular inversion.
What is that called?
L loop, sir.
L loop. So why did you say that? So cardiac malposition with inverted ventricles.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Inverted ventricles.
Ventricles.
Now, large.
Enlarged, sir.
Large. So what does it mean?
Probably a persistent left SVC draining into the coronary.
This is right side or left side?
Right side, sir.
Oh, come on, every
Right.
point I have to tell you.
Okay.
So is it? So it is a persistent
right
RSVC
RSVC. Okay.
draining through the coronary sinus. To which atrium?
It encircles the left atrium and drains into the right atrium.
So now which is the right atrium then?
The one on the left side, sir.
Left side. So
Yes.
now what is situs solitus or situs inversus?
RA is on the left side, so it is inversus.
Okay. So now we have got much more information. We got
Yes, sir.
dextrocardia, mesocardia.
Yes.
We got situs inversus.
Yes,
We
sir.
got L loop of the ventricles.
Ventricles. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And we have got anomalous,
Persistent.
not anomalous,
Persistent right.
persistent right SVC draining through
Draining
the
in.
coronary
Yes,
sinus
sir.
into the morphological RA on the left side.
Left side. Yes.
Right. That's all I wanted from this. So why can't you diagnose all this? Everything is there in that echo. Now the question they asked was, okay, describe the cardiac situs and position. Now that you didn't answer till I asked. Which congenital heart disease is most commonly associated with this situs and position?
LTGA, sir.
Okay, LTGA. Identify the structure
CCTGA.
marked by the arrow.
Coronary
In
sinus.
this
Dilated
case,
coronary.
don't say LTGA, because in this case it won't be LTGA. What TGA it will be? It will be actually RTGA.
Arteries. Okay. Sir.
So say corrected transposition.
Okay.
Okay.
Sir.
And then identify the structure marked by the arrow. That is dilated coronary sinus indicate
Coronary.
drainage of RSVC into RA through the coronary
Yes, sir.
sinus. Now I am not sure what is it, because somebody's head is the student's head is masking it. I don't know what that question is.
Question is. So, but in CCTGA, what will be the atrioventricular relationship? So here, if we take this as a right atrium,
No.
then right atrium is draining into the right ventricle.
Even in AV, okay, you're right. AV concordance, CTG is unlikely. You're absolutely right.
Yes.
I might have,
Yes.
I missed that. The
Yes.
AV concordance means it's unlikely to be CTG. Sorry.
CCTGA. Yes.
So if you have AV concordance dextrocardia, then
Yes.
you do not have any complex heart disease.
Yes.
You may have simple heart diseases like ASD, VSD, PDA, and all those things, but complex heart disease are unlikely.
Yes.
Okay, this will be a like a mirror
Sorry.
image dextrocardia, more or less.
Dextrocardia. So here it is like a situs inversus dextrocardia with otherwise normal.
Yes,
heart.
yes. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know
What is that? Then what is that second question they are expecting? So like which congenital heart disease is commonly associated?
Yeah, I said no. It may not be. I don't know what they have in mind. I don't know whether they are diagnosed AV, but I think in my reading of this is it is situs inversus L loop ventricle, and therefore it's a mirror image dextrocardia.
Okay, so
I have no idea what the examiners had in mind at that time.
fine, sir.
I was not the examiner, by the way. Okay, let's go on.
Fine.
So spotters taken from the exam, that's the point. No, we don't know what the correct answer is because the examiners won't tell you.
Yes.
Okay, somebody else take now. We are going to a different area now. 58 years old male, diabetic, non-hypertensive, dilated cardiomyopathy, 28% ejection fraction, normotensive. What are the standard of care drugs? You know what the standard of care drugs mean? Guideline directed treatment. What are all the drugs this patient should be receiving or can receive? Come on, quick here. Don't take time. These are common questions. Otherwise, we can't cover many slides if we go at this pace.
The beta blocker.
Beta blockers.
Oh, come on. Is that the first drug you give to a heart failure patient?
Diuretics.
Diuretics. Okay. Then
Diuretics, beta blocker,
Oh, sorry.
ACE.
Okay. Diuretic, beta blockers.
Then sir, ARNI or ACE-ARB.
Okay. Then
And SGLT2.
no short forms, please. No short forms.
Sodium glucose, E2, like transporter to
What is that?
SGLT2 receptor.
Okay, that's better. If you don't know the full name, don't try it.
And then sir, aldosterone receptor antagonist.
Okay.
Sir, we can also use digoxin.
Is that a standard of care drug?
No sir.
Okay. Right. Let's see what are the standard of care drugs. Right. So now I'll come to the last two. Now last two is a little controversial. I don't believe, but the first five are absolutely correct. Furosemide, beta blockers, aldosterone antagonists, neprilysin inhibitors, or ARB, one of alone, SGLT2 inhibitors, and canakinumab is a monoclonal antibody, which is recent studies have shown that if there is evidence of inflammation in a patient with heart failure, as shown by an elevated high sensitivity CRP, canakinumab causes improvement in symptoms and improvement in LV function. Therefore, it is a standard of care drug if high sensitivity CRP is elevated. So, it's a conditional standard of care drug. And iron, if the patient is iron deficient. Okay? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
How do you diagnose iron deficiency?
Serum ferritin level by
What normal level?
20 to 200.
So what is low? That means you have to wait till it becomes 0.
Less than 20.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Ferritin less than 100, sir, and transferrin saturation less than 20%.
Very good. Who was that?
Dr. Amit here, sir, triple M.
Okay. It is not 20 or 2 and all. It is actually these patients may have normal hemoglobin or low normal hemoglobin and still have iron deficiency as manifested by a ferritin level of less than 100 and transferrin saturation of less than 20%. So the definition of iron deficiency for heart failure patient is different from normal people. Okay? So if you have inflammation as shown by high sensitivity CRP, Kanaki, Mobab and iron, if there is evidence of iron deficiency, these are all trial proven drugs in heart failure. No. Okay? Now which of these drugs actually cause reverse remodeling? Now, not only these drugs, which are all the heart failure interventions can achieve reverse remodeling? You know what is reverse remodeling, no? And you have to tell me the mechanism also, how each one works. Okay? What is reverse remodeling? First you tell me that. Hello? What is so difficult about it? Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, then nobody is answering. Guys, remodeling is what happens in heart failure. Dilated ventricle, reduction of ejection fraction, increase in end-systolic volume, and increase in end-diastolic volume. That is remodeling. Reverse remodeling is when it comes back to normal. That is, LV diastolic volume decreases, LV systolic volume decreases, ejection fraction improves. That is reverse remodeling. The ultimate aim of all treatment is to cause reverse remodeling. What's the problem? Now, all drugs which are, all the medicines, all the treatment which you use in heart failure do not cause reverse remodeling. So many of the drugs that you told in the previous slide may or may not cause remodeling. Do diuretic cause reverse remodeling?
No, sir.
No, sir.
They only relieve
Blue diuretic is
symptoms.
not produced.
They only relieve symptoms. They do not cause remodeling. Does digoxin cause remodeling?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No. So go on. Now any other drug you tell me and tell me if it remodels or not. Beta blockers, do they cause remodeling?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Beta blockers cause remodeling. Does
AC
AC inhibitor, ARB, do they cause remodeling?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes.
sir. Yes.
They are drugs which are known to cause remodeling. All these drugs are known to reduce LV volume and improve ejection fraction. Yeah, come on, you tell me the list. RNA inhibitors are
Yes.
Arni, yes, sir.
RNA.
sir.
Okay. Yes. Next, what else? Aldactone, does it cause remodeling?
Yes, sir.
No,
Yes, sir.
not yet. Does aldactone cause remodeling of the left ventricle?
No.
I heard yes,
Yes,
and
sir.
I heard no, both.
Yes, sir.
No.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
more.
And it don't cause remodeling.
No, it doesn't cause remodeling. It improves survival, it improves the thing, but it doesn't cause remodeling. So, okay, what about interventions? Does CRT cause remodeling?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Now, it will be a good idea if you can remember one important trial for each one of these. Name of one trial. Okay? Now, these are all very old trials. Can you name one trial for ACE inhibitors? These are a little old trial. They may not ask you now, but still.
Capricorn, sir.
Something more common quoted. Solved. SOLVD.
Enalapril solved.
Yes, solved is the one.
Consensus. Two trials were.
Yes. Any trial showing ARNI?
Paradigm.
Paradigm.
Any
Very
paradigm.
good.
Paradigm HF.
Which trial showed CRT?
Medit CRT.
MADIT CRT. Very good. Okay. Surgical resection of the left ventricle, does it cause remodeling?
Yes.
Yes, definitely. That causes remodeling. CPAP in patients who have got sleep apnea. This is important. No? This commonly we don't discuss. In patients who have chronic heart failure and who have sleep apnea, obese heart failure patients who have sleep apnea, CPAP is one way of reducing LV volumes, and that's one of the mechanisms of reverse remodeling. And finally, very important for physiotherapy, the follow-up of heart failure patients, exercise training. Training of a heart failure patient in exercise is an important way of remodeling of the left ventricle. Okay? This is a very important slide because reverse remodeling is very much a current topic. Okay, shall I go on?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I forgot the most recent one, SGLT2 inhibitors. You know which trial is that?
DAPA
DAPA what? DAPA HF and one more?
DAPA HF.
DAPA.
Emperor reduced.
Emperor reduced.
Okay.
Emperor reduced.
What is this?
Sir, your topic.
Any one person, please. Not too many people. Come on, quick here. These are all easy ones. Come on, guys. You're all coronary experts. No?
Sir, this is Dr. Amit here, sir.
Yes.
So this is an OCT image. Just the three arrows which are pointed towards the intima, media, and adventitia, sir.
I'm sorry. You get 0 marks.
It's IVUS image.
It's an
Sorry, IVUS image, sir.
Hey,
Sorry,
come
sir,
on. Too many voices.
Sir, by mistake it was told. It is IVUS image, sir.
What is IVUS?
Intravascular ultrasound.
So I don't want any abbreviations when I'm asking a oral question.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I will use IVUS because I'll be talking many times. So, but please, the exam don't use the short forms.
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, can you tell me something about IVUS? What is it?
Sir, it is a intravascular ultrasound in which ultrasonic waves are released from the catheter placed inside the coronary artery. And
What catheter do you place inside?
Phase array.
it is mechanical IVUS catheter, sir.
Is it a catheter or a wire?
Wires. Sir, actually it is a catheter, sir.
Okay, that's better. So, because here you see a catheter and a wire both. Can you see that? It is actually you can see both.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, what is the frequency of the ultrasound?
Sir, 40 megahertz, sir.
20 to 45 megahertz.
20 to 45 megahertz. Okay. What is the frequency used in ordinary echo lab?
5 to 7 megahertz, sir.
You used 5 to 7 megahertz in your lab?
I think 2.5 to 5, sir.
Okay, that's better. Okay. So why do you use different frequencies for coronary and why do you use different frequency for transthoracic echo?
So because we want a better resolution in the coronary.
Okay. So you don't want resolution in transthoracic echo.
Sir, depth penetration wise, sir, we select.
Okay. A high frequency has better resolution but less penetration. Low frequency has more penetration, so it's better for the chest wall but less details. Okay. So that's better. Now what does it show?
This one, so the 3 arrows pointed are towards the intima. The middle arrow is in the media, and the external arrow is showing the adventitia, sir.
Right.
So there is some mild intimal.
No, can you describe it further?
There is intimal.
I see many lines here. I don't know which is similar. Can you tell me clearly what you mean?
So the internal arrow is the arrow which is pointed.
Okay, that's the
Is
intima.
intima. There is a middle. Intima looks thickened.
Okay.
And media, the black color in between the black halo, which is the media, sir.
Very good. The media is black. It's clear.
Yes,
No echoes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And adventitia
Is the outermost arrow, sir.
So now why intima and adventitia are producing bright echoes? Media is dark. Why?
Because media has smooth muscles, sir.
So what? Smooth muscle doesn't produce echo, is it?
Not sure, sir.
Somebody else? Quick, come on. These are all basic principles of echo, man. Echo is a reflected sound is produced only when there is a difference in acoustic density. Here there is a difference in acoustic density between the lumen and the intima. And then through the wall, there is not much difference in acoustic density. And again, after the adventitia, there is a fall in the acoustic density. So wherever there is a change in acoustic density, it will produce a ultrasound image. Okay, so is this normal or abnormal?
So this is other than intima looks like mild intimal thickening. It is normal, sir.
This is normal. This is it. Perfectly normal artery, wide lumen, thin intima, clear media, and a relatively thick adventitia. This is a normal coronary ultrasound. Okay.
Okay,
Now
sir.
somebody else can answer this. Somebody wants to try it? Somebody mic is
First one is lipid plaque. Second one is fibroathyroma. Third one is calcification.
Okay. So how lipid plaque? Where is it?
Sir, it is hypodense.
Where is it? I am asking.
Inside the lumen.
No, plaque doesn't form in the lumen. Only clot forms in the lumen. Where does the plaque form, man? Intima.
Intima, yes.
How do you know it's intima? How do you know it's not involving the media?
So there is a hyperdense media is there between the lesion and the
Don't
adventitia.
say hyperdense, it's translucent.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Translucent.
So you see that the intima is thickened with a very soft shadow, so much thickening, and it is concentric narrowing of the artery by a soft atheroma. Intact. So there is a fibrous lanthano and then a calcification in the intima. By this stage, you see that the media is getting obliterated. No? The media is getting obliterated. Right. Somebody else can take this. Not very difficult. Don't be afraid. Come on, try. What is the test? What is the principle? And then we go to findings. First, start with the test. What is it? Anybody? Come on, quick, please.
OCT near infrared technology.
Oh, I don't understand what is OCT.
Optical coherence tomography.
Okay, that's better. Okay, now what is optical coherent tomography?
Near infrared rays are used to see the lumen.
Okay.
To see
So
the lesion and
it's a direct visualization by a form of light.
near infrared.
How is it done?
Over the wire, the catheter is inserted, and on auto mode or mechanical mode, it is pulled outward.
Okay.
The speed is approximately 1.8 to 3.6 centimeter per second, and it takes the images in the coronal, in the cross section, and longitudinal images are taken.
So if you put a wire catheter and just pull it out, it will take an image.
So, over the wire.
Over the wire only, I'm telling.
Yes, sir.
You're missing something very important. You're
You have to
missing
clear the
something.
blood. You have to clear the blood by injecting
the line first.
The light cannot travel through blood, no?
Yes, sir.
Then why don't you say that? See, when I ask you the principle, no, you should tell the important. I don't expect you to tell me that my technical details and all. But at least the broad principle you would say. Light cannot travel through blood. So you have to clear the blood. How do you clear the blood?
Saline.
Sorry. 1 second. No? Aarti, I'm in a class. I'll call you back later. Yeah. So you have to clear the blood by how do you clear the blood?
Saline. Pushing saline.
Saline or contrast. Okay. Okay. So now start with the first image or first two images together. You can start. You should be smart here. So what did I show in the echo ultrasound? I always showed a normal one first.
So first one is normal.
Be a little smart. You know? Try to do some guesswork also. Okay. What does the normal one show?
First one is normal. A is normal.
A. Okay. A and B. B only a
Intima.
magnified version of A. So what does
Yes,
it
sir.
show?
So intima, media, bright is intima and adventitia.
Okay. So what is
And
the
the
difference
other
between ultrasound and optical coherence?
Sir, OCT use near infrared light.
No. Don't tell me the method.
Yes, sir.
In
Yes,
findings.
sir. So in findings, ultrasound, intravascular ultrasound can penetrate the penetration is more. So it can show the nearby structures also.
Mhm. Penetration is more, so it can show near structures. Come on.
Nearby vein and
Nearby means
pericardial space.
no. The vein and all is outside the artery, man. That far away structure. Tell me. No, don't say near structures.
Yes, sir.
See, the wire is inside. The probe is inside the artery. So the epicardium, epicardial surface of the artery is outside. No.
Yes, sir.
Don't say nearby. Farther away.
Further.
Okay. The difference is the OCT gives much more details of the layer. If you can see here, even the media can be broken up into internal elastic lamina, a central clear area, and the external elastic lamina. The two layers can be seen in the media also. Okay. You can see an intima, and then you can see internal elastic lamina, media, and external elastic lamina, and then adventitium. So it gives you more details of the, much more. What you call resolution is much higher. Okay.
10 times more resolution.
Yes. But penetration wise, how much does it penetrate? How much does ultrasound penetrate at 40 megahertz? And how much OCT penetrates? Roughly.
Sir, ultrasound penetrates around 100 to 300 microns, while OCT penetrate 10 to 20 microns, sir.
Microns? No. Microns is very, very small.
Ultrasound will penetrate 5 to 10 mm, sir.
5 to 10 mm, yeah.
OCT
Because the artery is about 5 mm, no? Normal arteries are between 5 to 7 mm, large arteries. So the ultrasound penetration will be start from the lumen, go up to the adventitia. So 5 to 7 or 5 to 10 mm. Whereas the OCT will penetrate only about 3 to 5 mm. So up to media or maybe inner adventitia it can penetrate. That too when it is not thickened. Once it is thickened, it cannot even go up to the adventitia. So more resolution, less penetration in OCT. Less resolution, more penetration in ultrasound.
Intravascular.
Yes, intravascular ultrasound. Okay, now what does this show?
Lipid.
What do you mean lipid? Do you see lipid in the artery? These are proper terms.
Atheromatous blocks with low attenuation.
So just to describe it further, no, see I put up different pictures for some meaning, no. This is different from this. This is different from this. So you have to describe it. This is concentric, uniform, not irregular, thickening of the intima. The intima is so thickened that the media is going out of the field now. Media is not clearly seen. You know, penetration is only 2 to 3 millimeters. So look, the media is going out of the field. So the intima is thickened, but it is uniform. It is smooth. It's very
homogeneous, yes.
Concentric. So it's more likely to be a
fibrous atheroma.
Fibrous. So why did you say that? You know the answer, but you are not talking. Okay, in comparison, what is this plaque?
It's a lipid-rich plaque, which is having a very high attenuation, eccentric plaque, and
it's an irregular eccentric plaque. Here it is much more. Here it is less. It is different densities in different places. Can you see dark areas and bright area? Different densities, not uniformly thickened. So it is likely to be an uneven lipid-rich plaque. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, don't worry about these gaps. These are artifacts. They are not
Artifacts, wire artifacts.
Yeah. Now, what does this show? E. What does E show?
This shows a calcium, sir.
Why do you say calcium?
Eccentric calcium.
Eccentric plaque with calcium. Why calcium?
Low attenuation and sharp.
Low attenuation.
Low attenuation, high attenuation, some people may not understand. I don't understand. What is that low attenuation, high attenuation?
So low attenuation.
Homogeneous.
No. You tell me, because I am trying to understand what is low attenuation, what is high attenuation. Or use terms which I can understand.
Like low attenuation means that low attenuation pass through and allow the visualization of the deeper tissue. High attenuation means the light cannot penetrate and very deep, it's getting attenuated.
So this high attenuation, sorry, is it high attenuation or low attenuation?
Low attenuation.
Low. See, keep it simple. When ultrasound reaches calcium, it is reflected back, bounced back very strongly. Therefore, it appears very bright and echogenic. On the other hand, when light reaches calcium, it is not able to penetrate it. So it appears dark. Simple. Right? So these are bright because light is able to penetrate. Here the light is not able to penetrate. Irregular mass in the deeper intima with dark area which light cannot penetrate is likely to be calcium. If the same thing, if you see by ultrasound, this will be very white. Ultrasound and OCT show calcium in opposite ways. Okay?
Yes.
Right. And finally, here you see here something here, bright spots inside the deep intimal layer, subintimal layer. What is this? Now this cannot be calcium because calcium is supposed to be, it won't allow light to penetrate. This is something which light is penetrating and therefore you see it as very bright. These are cholesterol deposits. They are called lipid clefts. This is positive indication of presence of lipids. These are called cholesterol clefts. Anyway, don't worry about so much detail. This is a fibrous plaque, this is a soft plaque, and this is a calcified atheroma. Keep it simple. Okay? In all these pictures, the intima adventitia are not even seen. They are outside the picture. Okay? Shall I move on?
Yes.
Okay. Now we go on to applied importance of these imaging in PCI. They are all different patients. I don't think they are the same patients. There are 3 patients here. 1, 2, and 3. The same patient, you got a OCT and you got a ultrasound, both. So who wants to try that? And this is all during PCI. I'm telling you that.
Sir, Surya, sir, I would like to know.
Okay.
The picture A shows discontinuity in the intimal layer, sir, probably a dissection, sir.
Okay, why do you see dissection?
So, I could see discontinuity in the intimal layer, sir, from near the arrow mark.
Okay. So don't you have to describe other things? No, you're talking of OCT now, no?
Yes, sir.
But you have got 3 pictures here, no?
Yes, sir. Yes. And the low, which is no.
It's a eccentric plaque with one edge lifted off from the intima. That is what suggests dissection. And since I told you it is a PCI case, you diagnose dissection. Okay. Okay. Now you see the same thing in ultrasound here, but it is much less clearly seen. That is because OCT gives more details of near structures than ultrasound. Okay, that's the reason this image is put up, to show the difference between OCT and ultrasound for near field structures.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So number 2, B. Who would like to take this?
It's
B is post stenting.
No, I can't hear.
The OCT is shows a post stenting segment of coronary artery, sir.
Okay.
And we can see the stent studs, and the arrow mark which is shown in the picture of OCT shows it is not properly opposed to the arterial wall. So under expansion is one possibility.
Don't say arterial wall. What the arterial wall is? Which part of the arterial wall?
Intima.
Talk specific terms. Okay, so mal-opposed stent, incompletely expanded stent. Okay, so what are these radial structures?
Stent studs.
There are stent studs.
No, these are studs. What are these radial black lines?
Shadows
of the struts. Okay. So here the stent is not opposed to the intima. Therefore, it's a mal-expanded stent. And what do you see here?
But not clearly seen here, sir, the position.
It is the same finding, but here also, here you see the stent, and here you see the intima, and it is not the same view, same everything. Only to show that the OCT gives much better in resolution than ultrasound. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Finally, third one. Another
under expansion and malopposition in OCT, sir.
Malopposition and what is the other one? Incomplete expansion. The same thing. The same. They mean the same.
Same.
Okay. What is this? This one and this one.
Sir, block rupture, sir.
Block rupture.
Red thrombus.
No, sorry, sir. It's a tissue prolapse, sir. There is stent studs are seen, and there is a prolapse of tissue through the studs, sir.
Okay. Prolapse of tissue will occur at the time immediately after stenting, or this is during PCI, no? No, it can happen, of course. Okay, it can be tissue also, but this is a very irregular soft tissue, more likely to be a red thrombus, no? Fresh thrombus protruding through the stent. We know there is a stent because these are the acoustic shadows are there. So we don't see the struts properly. Here the struts are properly touching the intima everywhere. We don't see the strut properly, but we see the acoustic shadow. In ultrasound, we see the struts of the stent. Okay, and these a thrombus forming under the stent and protruding through the struts of the stent into the lumen. Fresh thrombus.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Okay. Same thing in ultrasound here, but much better seen in OCT. Okay, so now because of these images, I am going to ask you some questions. Now, if you are a rich man, you will have the option of both OCT and ultrasound in your lab. Okay, so you have to decide which one to use. Of course, if you are very rich, you can use both in every patient. But, most of us are not that rich. So you have to tell me in what patient we use which one. Okay. Okay, I don't know what somebody said. Okay, LMCA. Which one will you use?
Intravascular ultrasound, sir.
Ultrasound.
One person, please. If too many people talk, I can't hear. Anybody, volunteer, please. Come on, when I say volunteer, nobody talks.
Yes, sir.
Who is that?
Sir, in
No, tell me who is answering, then I'll go on.
Dr. Amit here, sir.
Amit, okay. LMCA, which one will you use?
So I'll prefer IVUS, sir.
Why?
Because in the sometime while because of the in the OCT we might miss the osteal lesion, sir.
Why? Osteal lesion OCT image is very good, no?
Because IVUS has high penetration, so we'll prefer IVUS over the OCT.
Yeah, LMCA is big artery, no? It's a big artery. So OCT may not even reach the wall. Same applies to next one, large coronary artery. Okay. Sorry. Assess calcification. Which one would you use?
Again, IVUS, sir. Because
yes, IVUS can be used, but nothing wrong with OCT also. Either IVUS or OCT, but IVUS is the preferred choice because much clearly you can easily make out calcification. In OCT, it is made out by a negative that the light doesn't penetrate. Whereas in ultrasound, you see a positive image of the calcified area. Okay. Aorto-osteal lesion. Which one will you do?
IVUS.
IVUS.
Why?
Contrast flush is difficult in aorto-osteal lesions and OCT.
Very good. Because you have to engage the guiding catheter fully and block the forward flow for OCT. Only then you will be able to replace the blood with saline. In an osteal lesion, you can't engage the guiding catheter. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So in an aorto-osteal lesion, you cannot use OCT because you cannot get a clear lumen. You cannot engage the guiding catheter. Am I right? Okay, go on. Renal failure, what will you use?
IVUS.
Why?
IVUS, sir.
Why?
Because in OCT we need to use dye.
Contrast or saline, both volume load and contrast load. Okay. Plaque characters, you want to study?
OCT, sir.
OCT.
That's easy. Thrombus in the stent.
OCT.
Yes. Malapose stent.
OCT better, sir.
OCT
both can be used, sir, but
both can be used because both are in the lumen and stent are easily seen by ultrasound also. Dissection.
In OCT.
Both. And instant stenosis.
OCT.
Both. Because everything is happening inside the lumen, no? So OCT is good. It also either thrombus or intimal hyperplasia, fibrosis. Again, ultrasound is also good. So that's the list. So all the large arteries and osteal lesions, IVUS, and renal failure. Calcification, you can use either one. There's no problem. All the finer details, plaque, thrombus, malapose, dissection, malapose, thrombus and plaque, OCT. Dissection and instant, that is things happening inside the lumen, OCT is good, IVUS can also be used. Okay? So this is an important slide. This is because IVUS, OCT are very current topics. You must know which is the preferred method of investigations. Okay, I think I will go on to another. Today we are already 6:30. I will go on to some other topic. We're getting bored with ICT and ultrasound. Okay. Who will take this? Coronary, I heard a lot of voice. Echo also I must hear some voices. By the way, this was kept in, you asked in the last year's exam. No, I don't want diagnosis, please. Findings and then diagnosis.
Diastolic decay first.
No, wait. In echo, you always start with what is the investigation, what view, and then go to which chamber and then findings.
So it's a continuous wave Doppler at the pulmonary valve.
No, sir. What Doppler?
Continuous wave Doppler at the pulmonary valve. It is showing that there is a fast diastolic decay showing the severe pulmonary regurgitation.
Okay, good. Did everybody understand that? Whenever we have a sharp downstroke in the regurgitant stream, it indicates that the PA diastolic pressure is falling rapidly towards zero. So just like acute AR, in severe PR, the PR signal attenuates here. Okay. Now can you tell me what is the expected PA and diastolic pressure?
Sir, around 64 millimeters of mercury.
Who said that?
Sir, Dr. Kulin here, sir.
64 millimeters of mercury, you said. How did you calculate that? I'm talking of PA and diastolic pressure.
So PA and diastolic pressure will be very low, maybe less than 10, with a wide pulse pressure in the pulmonary artery.
Okay. How did you do that? You're right, but tell me the method.
The first peak in the PR jet indicates mean diastolic mean pressure, sir, and towards the end, the last peak shows it's pulmonary artery diastolic pressure.
If you can see my arrow, this is end diastole. The PR velocity is very, very low, only 10 centimeters. So 10 centimeters multiplied by 4, 10 centimeters squared multiplied by 4. That will be end diastolic PA pressure. Similarly, the pressure at early diastole, at the peak of the PR signal, is about 2 meters. 2 squared will be 2 into 2, 4. 4 into 4 is equal to 16. So what the mean pressure in the pulmonary artery? Hello?
16, sir. 16 millimeters of mercury.
Okay. So that is how you calculate pulmonary pressures. In contrast, this shows something else. What does it show?
In that the end diastolic pressure is quite high, around 4 into 4 is 16, 16 into 4, 64 PA pressure.
And the mean pressure?
Mean is around
say 5 meters.
2500.
So now what is the diagnosis?
Severe PH with mild PR.
Okay, very good. So it is severe pulmonary hypertension with mild PR. So that's the important difference. Just like AR, when you have a long pressure half time, it indicates milder regurgitation. When you have a short half time, everybody knows what is half time, no? Time taken for the velocity to fall to half its value. So for the gradient to fall to half its value, not velocity. Okay. So if the slope is sharp, it indicates severe regurgitation. If the slope is horizontal, it indicates longer half time, and it means milder regurgitation. This is low pressure severe PR. Example, low pressure severe PR. Example,
Absent pulmonary valve. I'm sorry.
Absent pulmonary valve, but more common.
Post-top free PR.
Post balloon.
Hey, come on. Most common condition I'm asking. Operated tetralogy of Fallot. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
The most common condition is operated tetralogy of Fallot. Then comes balloon of pulmonary stenosis. Then comes absent pulmonary valve and all that. And this is pulmonary hypertension with PR. It may be idiopathic PAH, it may be Eisenmenger PAH, we don't know what it is. Okay. Now, echo assessment of PAH is a very important topic. There are many methods of estimating PA pressure. I'm not going to go into the details. I think you should read it up. But all of you know peak TR. It gives you an idea of the RV systolic pressure, and by that you can guess the PA systolic pressure. Acceleration time in the pulmonary artery Doppler. If it is less than 100, it indicates PAH. It's not quantitative. It's only a qualitative or semi-quantitative. I told you already early PR and end PR velocities. Then TDI, tissue Doppler in the tricuspid annulus has been shown to correlate with PAH. You can remember. Then there are other formulas. Mean PA pressure is the TR jet velocity plus RA mean pressure. So on IVRT, isovolumic relaxation time more than 75. These are all indirect indicators of PAH. Okay, and even E bar E prime in the RV, if it is increased, it's an indirect sign of PAH. Okay, so just read up some of these values in case they want to know the different methods of measuring PA pressure. I don't want to go into the details now. Okay. Right, just a few more slides and then I'm stopping.
This is a pressure volume curve. Okay.
Quarter mark.
So it is a pressure volume curve which shows increase and diastolic volume and reduce end systolic volume with increased stroke volume.
Okay.
Sir, I would like to take some.
No, let him finish. No, one person has started, so don't interrupt, please. No. So, increase end diastolic volume, I agree. Increase end systolic volume, I agree. And
increase stroke volume.
Stroke volume also, I agree. Now, why do you say increase diastolic volume, decrease? How are you concluding all that?
Sir, it's a pressure volume loop of a mitral regurgitation.
No, I'm asking you something, you're telling me different. What did I ask you? I say, how did you say increase end diastolic volume?
Sir, because in the normal pressure volume curve, the end diastolic volume is around 120, and the
so you can say that I know the normal values. So end diastolic, or the normal graph is shown here. That's a much simpler answer, no? The normal graph is shown. The inner one is a normal graph. For example, end diastolic volume, end systolic volume around 50 ml, and end diastolic volume of 110, 120 ml. That's normal. And the stroke volume is indicated by the area under the curve. Okay, that's the answer I want. Okay, so obviously the area of this abnormal curve is increased, the stroke volume is increased, end diastolic volume is increased, and end systolic volume is decreased. So LV function is good or bad?
LV function is normal.
Yeah, it's not deteriorated. Don't say normal, not deteriorated. Because when the end diastolic volume increases, the end systolic volume has gone down. So ejection fraction is likely to be good or bad?
It is good.
Because it's ejecting most of the blood it's getting, no? It's ejecting more blood than even normal. Okay. So yes, now what? So it's clear it's a volume loaded ventricle. Okay, go on now. What else? You said something, then you started saying the diagnosis, then I stopped you.
It is a mitral regurgitation.
That doesn't produce any mark. Because you are not able to explain to me why. That is pattern recognition, which is not given any credit.
Because increased stroke volume and increased end-diastolic.
It can be anemia, it can be aortic incompetence, it can be dilated cardiomyopathy, it can be so many other things. Hyperdynamic circulatory state.
Because
there is no true isovolumetric contraction.
I heard 2-3 voices. Somebody else wants to answer? Go ahead.
There is no true isovolumetric relaxation, isovolumetric contraction.
How do you know?
Because when there is a isovolumetric contraction phase, the blood is continuously leaking from LV to LA.
How do you know it is leaking from the left ventricle in this case?
Because the right-sided the right-sided vertical line suggests you isovolumetric contraction.
Good. Okay. So isovolumic contraction means the ventricle starts contracting here. The pressure starts building up, and in the normal ventricle, the AV valve is closed. Therefore, although the pressure is rising, the volume does not decrease. The volume remains the same, around 120. So the pressure rises but no change in volume, isovolumic contraction. Then the aortic valve opens and ejection starts. Then the volume starts decreasing. Whereas here, the isovolumic contraction phase itself, the ventricle has started leaking. Look, it is oblique. The volume has started falling in isovolumic contraction. So, even before the aortic valve is open, the ventricular volume has started falling. That means absence of isovolumic contraction indicates mitral regurgitation. Unless you explain that clearly, you will not get marks for this. So, isovolumic contraction, the blood is leaking into LA. And then with contraction, blood is going into the aorta as well as into LA. As a result of which, the volume load, the stroke volume of the ventricle is greatly increased. Everybody understood that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You can see the isovolumic relaxation is relatively sharp without any change in volume. Here also it is sharp, here also it is sharp. But this ventricular function is relatively okay because the volume load is there and end systolic volume has decreased. But still, end diastolic volume has increased. End diastolic pressure has increased to higher level. So this is a large volume overload ventricle with elevated LV EDP, but still maintaining a good ejection fraction. Now this is the same slide. I want to show you two slides. For example, here it's a volume load with a MR. You see isovolumic contraction is absent, but still the end systolic volume is quite good, less than 50. Whereas at a later phase in the natural history, the isovolumic contraction is completely obliterated. At the same time, the end systolic volume has increased from 50 to it has become 150 or more. So this is a end stage of mitral regurgitation. The increase in end diastolic volume, increase in end systolic volume, and you can see that the area under the curve is also much reduced, isn't it? So it says LV dysfunction with mitral regurgitation. It could be late phase of valvular MR, it could be a cardiomyopathy, it could be myocarditis, I don't know what it is. But do you understand the difference between this and this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So both are mitral regurgitation. This is at an earlier phase of LV function. This is an advanced stage of LV dysfunction. Here, what's the volume of the mitral regurgitation? Not much, because LV function is so poor that very little is going into LA, very little is going into aorta also. Got it?
Yes.
Okay.
Sir, one question. Sir, in this is a mitral regurgitation. Sir, how would we know that whether it is acute or a chronic on the basis of this pressure volume loop?
See, on the basis of pressure volume loop, strictly speaking, acute mitral regurgitation would have no isovolumic contraction phase, but the ventricle would not have dilated so much. If you see a similar picture at a lower ventricular volume and also systolic pressure at a low, suppose systolic pressure is only 80 or 90, then you suspect that it may be an acute MR like myocardial infarction, cardiogenic shock. So the same picture at a lower volume and at a lower systolic pressure. See, acute MR cannot produce systolic pressure of 120. Remember last class I told you that acute MR, chronic MR, acute AR, chronic AR, the systolic pressure is also important.
Yes.
The same figure if it appears here with a low systolic pressure.
Okay.
Because the ventricle has not dilated and the patient is in a state of compensated or uncompensated shock. Okay. Now the next one, I'll just show all of it together. So mitral regurgitation I have already shown you. This is the one I have already shown you. So compared to this aortic regurgitation, look at this. The area under the curve is very large, much larger than the normal. Again, this is another volume overload. Here also the end diastolic volume is increased and end systolic volume is also increased a little bit. Here the isovolumic contraction phase is also reduced, but more important, the isovolumic relaxation phase is oblique. Can you see this? Instead of being vertical, as the aortic valve, when the aortic valve is closed, the ventricle is relaxing. Normally the ventricular volume should not change, but here the ventricular volume is constantly increasing. So even before the mitral valve opens, the LV volume has increased from about 40 ml to 70 ml, 80 ml. So this is AR. Because of the volume overload, there may be some MR also.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now these two conditions, the area is not increased. Normal, it has not increased. Therefore, these two are not volume overloaded conditions. Okay? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. This. Now, here, the diastolic filling is impaired. The LV is smaller than normal. Yes? LV end diastolic volume is normally 110, 120 is reduced to 100. The rest of it looks normal. Normal isovolumic contraction, normal ejection, normal isovolumic relaxation. Only the diastolic filling seems to be impaired. So, likely to be impaired filling. Mitral stenosis. No, you cannot define this area with decreased LV volume. Because mitral stenosis before the LV, it doesn't affect the LV directly. It only affects LV indirectly. Only indirectly. Therefore, LV dysfunction in mitral stenosis is due to impaired filling. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, what is this? Aortic stenosis. Very easy to diagnose because it's not volume overload and the systolic pressure is very high compared to normal. Yes? So, the end systolic volume is increased because possibly LV is not able to eject fully because of the obstruction. But the isovolumic contraction is normal, isovolumic relaxation is normal, ejection is not as sharp as in MR. Look, ejection here means, how do you know the ejection? Volume decreases rapidly. Volume decreases from 180 to 50 so fast, almost horizontally. Here, it reduces gradually, like a slow rising pulse. So, this is aortic stenosis with an elevated end systolic volume also, indicating some LV dysfunction. The moment end systolic volume is increased, it means that ejection fraction has decreased. So, this is aortic stenosis with LV dysfunction. Aortic stenosis is a normal LV function. The LV and end systolic volume will be close to 50 or 60 here. Because end systolic volume is increased, it indicates the ejection fraction has dropped. So, this is aortic stenosis with LV dysfunction. Did you follow, all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, I think I'm going to stop here. Any questions on that?
No, sir.
Everything clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay, then it's already close to 7 o'clock, so I think I better stop here. So if there are no questions in the chat box. Any other questions in the chat box?
No, sir.
No questions in the chat box. Okay, so still time to ask a question. Okay, so no questions. I'll wind up now. Please, we'll meet again on Thursday evening at 5 o'clock.
Yes.
I'll continue the same OSCEs. I think I've got enough OSCEs for the next 2 or 3 more sessions, in fact.
Okay, sir.
So, but we have to have volunteers. No, during the talk I can't be asking who will present. So if you have 3-4 people ready, tuck, one person takes next and we can go fast. Okay.
Yes, sir, I will put it in the group, sir. In the WhatsApp group, I will put it tomorrow. We'll find out the volunteers.
Okay. So I'm winding up. Good. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any feedback or anything different you want, please email me in the email address.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.